clear. And she can help you and your organizations and your boards be clear as well. I want to take a moment to thank attended events. It is their incredible work behind the scenes that is making this a really smooth experience. Let's give them a round, please. We're about halfway through, and it's time for Peter A. Peter A. enjoyed a career in advertising. He got to spend over $1 billion as a media buyer. But in the 2 years that he was on the sales side, he noticed a glaring problem. Peter uses his signature blend of humor and information by providing clear understanding of generational divides, and he offers strategies for effectively managing and working with people across the generations. This presentation explores establishing clear cultural values and the skills necessary to inspire, motivate, and unite various teams. He is going to do just that. Please join me in welcoming Peter A. Come on up.
Did you see that last name? That's why I go by Peter A. Nobody can say it and nobody can spell it. So I'm going to tell you how to say it. It's Agiovlassitis. It's not Agiovlassitis because itis is an inflammation. Let me talk to you today about bridging the gap. As Wendy mentioned, I was an advertising media buyer. But for 2 years out of my career, I went on the sales side. And they told me I had to make 50 cold calls a week. Okay? I made those calls. And after 1 month, I made 200 calls, and 8 people called me back. And I thought that was bad, but they said, no, that's good. But there was something unique about the people who called me back. After speaking with them a little while on the phone, I kind of got the idea that they were just like me. They were baby boomers. And I said to myself, well, if baby boomers are calling me back, where's everybody else? So I did a little research, and I found out a few things. Baby boomers called me back because they like to talk, and they like to talk on the phone. Gen X, they didn't call me back because they like to email. Millennials, they didn't call me back because they like to text. And Gen Zs didn't call me back. They love the phone, but it's Snapchat for them. You cannot deliver a message to someone if you don't know how to deliver it. This is my family. I affectionately call them the A-Team. That's me. That's my wife, Jean Ann. We're going to celebrate in March of next year, 40 years of marriage. That's my son, Tyler. Did I say Jean Ann and I are boomers? Tyler is a millennial, and my feisty young daughter, Morgan, she's a Gen Z. One of the things I've always had to struggle with in the house is how to communicate all around with each one of us. But once you are aware of the problem, then you can begin to solve how you are going to communicate. But delivery of the message is not the only thing to worry about. You have to find the differences and similarities between the generations, because each generation is different. Each generation has its own set of values and its own set of attributes. And if you don't know what they are, you will not be able to speak to them. You cannot collaborate with a different generation unless you know what their values and attributes are. Let me show you what I mean. These are all the generations in one picture. You have, the first one is the greatest generation. The second is the silent generation. There's the baby boomers at Woodstock. Although I could split that down the middle, you could have disco on the other side. Gen X, Millennials, Gen Z, and the newest generation is called Generation Alpha. They say that Generation Alpha will be the wealthiest generation ever. Right now, the wealthiest generation are the baby boomers. Now, let's take the greatest generation. They suffered through 2 world wars. One of the values for them, they had to sacrifice. They had to scrimp and save. If you might remember your grandmother or your great-grandmother, if you went into their kitchen and pulled out one of the drawers, there are probably a lot of plastic bread bags in there, because they would save the bags if they needed to do sandwiches or something. And that's what they saved. Or grandpa or great-grandpa was in the garage with the little baby food jars, putting nuts and bolts in there to save them for whenever they needed it. That was their value. They were frugal. Let's fast forward to Gen Zs today. They value experiences. They will trade money for time. It's nothing for a Gen Z to pick up their iPhone, go to the DoorDash app, get a Starbucks coffee delivered to their house remotely, and pay $20 for it. Someone from the greatest generation would not spend more than $2 for a cup of coffee. You have to know what each generation's value if you are going to collaborate with them. This is an important slide because this tells you where everybody is. I'm going to take the baby boomers. At that time, they were the largest generation ever. Baby boomers are starting to retire. But let me tell you something. You will not get the last baby boomer out of that office unless he absolutely, positively gets kicked out. They will work as long as they can work for. Gen Zs and millennials, together, they represent the biggest group of the generations. They are a force to be reckoned with in the workplace. You have to deal with them. And then there's the Gen X, the smallest one of the group. But let me tell you something. Right now, Gen X controls the C-suite. They are making the decisions. You have to know where you stand in the generation space. Opportunities. Tony Robbins said, to effectively communicate, we must realize that we are all different in the way we perceive the world and use this understanding as a guide to our communication with others. Here's an iconic picture that I put up in one of my presentations. And I kind of put it up, too, because if you didn't already figure it out, I'm not from North Carolina, even though I've lived here since 1985. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. And that nightclub is the nightclub I used to go to with my fake ID when I was a kid. Now, when I put this picture up, I looked out at the audience, and I saw a few people over here with the blank stare. I'm like, excuse me, I see that you're not, do you know who that is? No, we have no idea. You don't know who that is? How many people do not know who this is? And 20% of the audience raised their hand. I was not aware. They did not know that that was John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever. I didn't know. Here's another iconic picture. Do you know that there's an entire generation that does not know that picture? They were not even born yet. They don't get it. So when we say never forget, they can't forget because they never knew. You cannot relate to another generation unless you know where they're standing from. I love AC/DC. I never saw AC/DC in concert, so this is my next best thing. These girls are called Shoot the Thrill. They're a Raleigh band. Check them out. I found them in 2014. I've been going to see them ever since. I'm one of their groupies. I show up in the front row. I take pictures. But guess who else loves AC/DC? My daughter Morgan, because she learned it from sitting in the back seat of the car. Morgan works on the weekends at the famed five-star Farrington House as a bartender. It's a bougie place over there. She was working one night. Older gentleman comes up. Oh, my time has expired. I am done. I am so sorry. I will leave the stage.